High school teachers have 25 to 35 students in every class period. And those students are going to range from, 15 years old to 21 years old. Yeah, I said 21 years old. I had a student once who was called down to the office years and years ago over the intercom. And he left, went down to the office, came back and said, "Hey, it's been nice being in your classroom, but they told me if I want to try to still get my high school diploma, I need to go to night school." I said, "What do you mean? What did you do? They're kicking you out of school?" He said, "Well, I'm 21 and they said that I can't come to the school anymore because of my age." His fellow students around him said, "Oh yeah, he's 21. He pulled out his driver's license and handed it to me. I looked at it and it was his birthday." They kicked the kid out on his 21st birthday because it was too old. So yeah, there can be 21-year-olds in the high school. It's amazing. He didn't act 21. He wasn't a problem in class. I was just surprised he was 21 years old. Okay, back to the story. So you've got 25 to 35 students in this class. They're 15 to 21 years old, and they're all yours. You have to teach them, you have to manage them, and if there's a problem, you need to handle it. If you have a real problem, a fight, an altercation, a belligerent student, what are you going to do? You can call somebody to come help you, but good luck with that. There is no team. It's you and the students. And in many times, that's awesome. But every once in a while, it can become a big problem. Now, if you heard the beginning of my story, the first video, my father could kind of look across the room and I'd straighten up. Well, I don't want to say I had that effect with my students, but my students knew my rules and they knew how far I would go to make sure that everything was a safe and learning environment, let's say, in the classroom. So I seldom had problems. I did things that probably were not educationally appropriate, but they allowed me to manage the environment in my classroom. But most teachers won't do that because there is a liability issue. You might not get away with it, and especially today, it's much more difficult to manage those students. And there's very little help. For example, just in the last few years, teachers have been complaining about the lack of support. Let me read you this one from one of the faculty advisory committees. There's a significant delay in responses when a dean or administration are called to assist in a room. There are many instances where they're being called 3, 4, or more times before anyone responds. This has been happening for years, and it's a huge problem. Think about it. One adult in a classroom with 25 to 35 young adults, and there's a fight, there's an altercation, there's a belligerent student wanting to fight with one of the teachers, and the teacher calls for assistance. I've experienced it where it's taken 10, 20, 30 minutes. One time, it took the entire class period before somebody actually responded. Now, it's probably only occurred where I had to call somebody over all of the 30-some years I've been teaching, maybe 8 or 10 times. But when those calls went out and I needed somebody, they weren't there. One time, there was a gentleman who knew me, and he knew that I handled my own problems in my classroom, and that if I was calling for assistance, it was a very serious problem. And he came bursting through the door. And I kind of laughed because just before he came bursting through the door, which took like 5 minutes because he was all the way on the other side of the school, and it's a large school. It just happened at that moment, there happened to be a dean and one of the police officers 20 feet from my classroom when I put out the call and said I needed help. But other than that one time, the other 8 or 10 times, it took more than 20 minutes for somebody to appear. This is a problem that needs to be addressed at the schools nationwide. Now, it's not always terrible. There are some classes that, over the years, I didn't want them to end because I was having a great time with the students. They were learning something, and I was enjoying seeing them learn. So it can be a really, really good experience. But when it's not, you need somebody to be there that has your back. And in all these meetings, they'll tell you, oh, we've got a team. Baloney, don't believe it. There is no team. There's you and the students. And if you can't handle that, you shouldn't be a teacher. Find something else to do. Teacher stress is not the only problem. There's also student stress. Some of these students don't have a great home life. Some of the students don't have anybody to ask them how they did in school today. Some of the students come to school hungry. Every 52 minutes, the class changes. And in the 6 minutes passing time, somebody broke up with their boyfriend. Somebody broke up with their girlfriend. Right? Somebody went and bought some drugs. Somebody comes high to your classroom. There's all kinds of problems that can occur within that 6-minute period. You've got a student who's depressed. You have a student that you might suspect is being abused at home. Or you might have a student who generally just doesn't want to be here, or is just having a bad day like everybody has. And all of that mix can happen in that 25 to 35 students that you have in the classroom. So it's difficult being a teacher. And sometimes it's difficult just being a human being, when not only do you have to deal with all of that, you also have to present information in an entertaining way that the students will understand. And with students with all those different types of distractions, and some of these students have different learning disabilities. Well, we all have learning disabilities, right? We all learn or have different experiences. Some are good at math, some are good at reading. You have to take your instruction to a multimedia level to try to meet the needs of all those students. Because if you're not meeting the needs of those students, then they're distracted, they're not paying attention, and they become a problem. So it's not just I want them to learn, I also want to make sure that they're not distracting the other students that want to learn. So you've got to keep it entertaining. But not only that, you have to be human and realize they have other thoughts as they're walking in the classroom. And sometimes I'll spend 10-15 minutes talking about something one of the other students brought up in the class. Hopefully I can curve it and turn it around and use a little craftsmanship to get it to apply to whatever I'm trying to teach them that day. I think that's the skill. Often we end up talking about jobs and money and finance and what their future is, because especially the juniors and seniors, they're interested in that. These students get a job, and all of a sudden they see on their paycheck, they see that money is taken out and they don't understand what taxes are. So I've often talked about that stuff with them, even though I'm teaching electronics. Some of these kids are going to be really skilled in electronics and computer science. They're going to make a lot of money, and if they don't know how to properly manage it, that's going to be a problem. And that's something the schools are lacking. And that's something that, as time goes on, you're going to see me having several videos out on YouTube about finances and investing and properly managing your money, because I've talked about that with my students for years, and even they will tell me, you should be a financial advisor, you should teach this. We're not getting, this is the information that we need in school. The students even know it, and there's a lack of that. It's a problem. But the students, they come into the classroom, and each day their emotions, their attitudes may be different. And you've got to know that and be sensitive to that. When a student's missing for a day or two, I try to always notice that, and when they come in, just saying something like, welcome back. so that they know you know they were gone. You might be the only person that entire day that noticed they were gone. And just saying that might be enough for them to say, oh yeah, my mom got in a car accident, or I was sick for this. Something they just might need to be able to say one or two sentences to somebody to get it off their mind, or to know somebody cared, so that now they can focus on something else. We all need that. They say it's mental health. We go through this mental health stuff in school now, which honestly is a bunch of garbage. It's, maybe if it just helps one person, it's great. But so far it's been kind of a waste of time. It's necessary, it's needed, I get that. It always has been. But it used to be that the teachers were more sensitive to that, and it wasn't something we need to formally do. We just did it as human beings, and now people are so static and are only doing their job and presenting information, and that's it, with blinders on. At least that's how it seems to me, and that's a huge problem. When I see students, as I stand at my door and I look out and I see students going into other classrooms, over the years there have been times where I've seen students' body language change as they got closer to a room. And I actually had a student one time that was in my class, came to me and said, can I come to your classroom instead? Because he didn't want to go into the other teacher's classroom. And I was like, what's wrong? He says, that teacher was negative. He used different words, and he just didn't want to be in the room. And it was depressing to me. But I've seen that, just watching their body language. They're all happy, and then all of a sudden they get closer to the room and they just don't want to go in there. You know, I tried to create an environment where the students, when they walk into my room, they'd see me, they'd smile. They'd see me and they're like, you don't know what I'm going to do exactly. I'm not going to stick with the rigid lesson, right? Depending on their interactions, I may change what I'm doing because they need that. I'm going to get to the course content, without a doubt. But I'm also going to be a human being and try to discuss what they're curious in and what's happening every day, right? And they'll give me a silly, goofy smile sometimes, and that's okay. Some of them will like me and some of them won't, but that's okay. Generally, I'm trying to give everybody a positive experience, and sometimes it's really depressing to see the changes in students. And as I'm saying to you right now, because I'm still teaching while I'm making this video, I know a student in one of my classes who I haven't seen in probably 3 weeks. And I'm curious and worried what's going on with that student. He's a junior, and he was in the beginning of the year coming to school every day. And now I haven't seen him in like 3 weeks. And he's a bright kid, so it's not classwork. He's getting it done when he's there. I'm worried he might fail his classes this year and be a junior again next year. And something outside the school is having an effect, because when he's there, things are good. So I'm hoping he can get his act together, because if not, he may lose a year, and that's really slowing down what they can do in life.